All right, so you've seen the thumbnail. Sean Strickland bit Dricus Du Plessis.
That's f***ing illegal.
Of course, Sean Strickland is the middleweight champion, and he's fighting Dricus Du Plessis at UFC 297, going down in freezing cold Toronto, Canada. Okay, but the action started early. You probably saw the brawl by now. UFC 296, they're in the crowd, they're going back and forth, they're chatting a bit. Sean Strickland just gently brushes aside Gilbert Burns' little boy and then attacks him, goes full psycho, and apparently bit him. He was talking on Theo Von's podcast recently, and he was very honest. He was very emotional. He spoke about some of the hardships of his childhood and some of the, well, basically the torture that he had to endure as a young man. So, of course, anytime brings that up, it's going to trigger a very emotional response from Sean, and he kind of lost it for a second.
It's one of the hard things that people don't understand, like trauma, you know?
Yeah. Sometimes it just comes out.
But here's what Sean had to say. He said, I'm so happy that the cameras didn't get the brawl from the right angle because I bit him. I shit you not. Whenever he went into me, I remember at that moment, he tackles me, and right there, you can see my head goes up towards him. I started thinking, how can I hurt this man? I am going to take a effing chunk out of him. I'm going to bite his effing ear off. As I say, Mike Tyson, eat your heart out 101.
And I'm just ferocious. I want your heart. I want to eat his children. There he bites him.
Now, we know what kind of triggered this. There was a UFC 297 press conference in Las Vegas. Dricus and Sean were on stage, and Dricus took a few shots at him, and he spoke about his childhood, right? And that's what angered Sean Strickland. That's why he did that. Now, Sean has been very open about it. He's talked about it at length, and I guess he's put that out there. And you got to remember, this is the fight game, and people say a lot of nasty shit. And if there's a way to hurt you, if there's a way to throw you off your game, if there's a way to anger you and make you emotional, then fighters are going to do that because they can use that to their ability. When you're angry, when you're acting out of emotion, you're not the best version of yourself, and you're not following a game plan, right? That thing there with Sean Strickland and Dricus Du Plessis in the crowd, that wasn't like when I used to talk shit against George St. Pierre.
But I tell you what hasn't changed. He's got the same fucking suit on as the last press conference. Come on, George, you got some money, man. Buy a new suit. What the fuck? You look like a history teacher.
When I was fighting George, right, I knew he was a big star. We were going to make a lot of money through pay-per-view sales, and I wanted to make that bigger. So anytime there was a camera around, I would talk mad shit. But I've got nothing but love and respect for George St. Pierre. The man's an absolute legend. But this wasn't that. That was literally Sean Strickland losing his mind and in the process, hyping the fight up because now we all want to see that fight, right? All right, today's video is sponsored by Premier Fight Picks, which is brought to you by Bardia Helmy. Bardia Helmy is a top combat sports bettor and analyst with a 70% winning record, publicly tracked over 5 years. Now, Bardia has been on a roll, profiting on the previous 12 to 14 UFC events, including on this past weekend's UFC Fight Night, where he went 8 out of 10 on his picks. Look, if you like to bet on fights and you're looking for winners and you need help picking them, well, you got to visit premierfightpicks.com. Currently, there are several bets posted on UFC 296, including a huge play on the highly anticipated main event. In addition, there is already a big future bet posted on the upcoming Volkanovski versus Topuria title fight. Sign up now to view all of this content and much more. And lastly, give Bardia a follow on Instagram at Premier Fight Picks and Twitter at PFP Handicapping for access to free bets, analysis, and fight breakdowns. Well, here's the thing. Sean Strickland came out when he was on the Theo Von podcast and he was talking about Dricus and he said, you don't talk like that. Certain things are off limits. Here's what he said. There are some things that are just off limits. You don't really talk about a man's wife. You don't really talk about a man's kids. And you don't talk about a man being abused. These things are off limits. Once Dricus crossed that, I tried to effing ignore it. I was boiling. Whenever Dricus goes on there and he jokes about that shit, dude, you have no idea. I'll effing kill you. You have no idea. I think the issue is too, when you're a kid and you're made to be a victim your whole life, as an adult, you're like, no, never again. I will effing kill you. Now, here's kind of where the pot is calling the kettle black, where you live by the sword, you die by the sword. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. All these kind of terms spring to mind, and Ian Garry is having an absolute field day with it because, well, let's remember, Ian Garry was the target for quite some time of Sean Strickland because of this whole last name of the ex-husband, the Machado stuff and all the rest of it. I'm not getting into it. You know what I'm talking about. You've seen the tweets. You've seen the headlines. It did the rounds for quite a while. All the trolls online were having a field day with it. And let's remember, Sean Strickland was tweeting about that stuff a lot. He said, Ian Garry's wife is a sexual predator. Verbatim this, she sought out a young athlete to seduce because she's getting old and still wanted to be famous. Nobody of fame wanted you, so you preyed on a kid. You are and will forever be known as a succubus. That's what he said. And then on the Theo Von podcast, he said, you don't talk about a man's wife and all the rest of it. So look, listen, it is a little bit of a double standard issue and all the rest of it. So of course, Ian Garry is absolutely loving this stuff. He said, how the tables have turned. You dish it out the lowest in the most vile manner, but you can't take a pinch. You attacked my wife incessantly and obsessively, calling her a paedophile. It's clear to see your childhood trauma showing. You claimed that you were giving me advice before. Well, now it's my turn to return the favor. You should shut your mouth and focus on the mirror because you have enough serious issues you need to solve. I wish you all the best with them. Don't ever project your pain onto me and my family ever again. And listen, fair enough, right? Sean Strickland did come out and he did talk some shit, and so Ian Garry's allowed to respond. And this is all a bit of he said, she said, and all the rest of it. But it's drama in the fight game, and we love a bit of drama, and especially when the two people are going to fight. And of course, Dricus Du Plessis, he has stepped into the fray as well. He has been tweeting. He's been throwing it in Sean Strickland's face, saying he was literally talking about Ian Garry's wife the other day. Somebody tweeted back at him and said, but didn't you talk about Ian's wife, Sean? Okay? And listen, I agree with Sean. Wives and children are off the table. But when you start it, when you go down that path, then all bets are off. The gloves are off and a lot of nasty shit gets said. Look, listen, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. They're just words. Sticks and stones may break my bones and all that good stuff. What will break a bone, though, is one of Dricus Du Plessis' punches to the face. Let's remember, he dropped Robert Whittaker with a jab. A beautiful shot, right? Can you imagine what a full right hand hard, crushing blow is going to do? He took down Darren Till quite easily. He's got to be careful with Sean Strickland if he does that stuff. But more importantly, Sean Strickland has got to control his emotions. He's got great jiu-jitsu. He's the middleweight champion of the world. He put an absolute sensational beatdown on Israel Adesanya to become the champ. If that version shows up, it's going to be an incredible fight. And us fans, we are in for an absolute treat. But it's going to get spicy. It's going to get worse. And this is just the beginning. I cannot wait for that press conference. Sean Strickland bit Dricus Du Plessis. He bit him. He tried to take a chunk out of him. The man's an absolute psychopath, but we already knew that, and that's why a lot of people love him, and people now are loving him as well because he broke down in tears on Theo Von's podcast. Because guess what? We're all human. Fighters, tough guys like us, so to speak, we're probably more vulnerable, right? We have more emotional damage and scarring going through our brains and our minds and our childhood and our backgrounds. That's why we end up fighting in an octagon, in a cage, in our underpants for a living, because we're all messed up in one way or the other, right? Some people have had life a bed of roses. Some people have had it really, really hard. And there's many, many different levels to it, okay? Some worse than others. And certainly by all accounts, it sounds like Sean Strickland had it really tough growing up. So we should not talk about that. And I agree with Sean, but the reality is, and I'm repeating myself, when you're going to talk about a man's wife, then, as I said before, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So anyway, there's a bit of an update on UFC 297. As I said, I can't wait for this one. That fight card's going to be amazing. It's the first pay-per-view of the year. They're returning back to Canada after quite a long time. I don't know how long it is, but it's a while. Toronto, the fans up there are absolutely sensational. Sean Strickland defending against Dricus, as I said. Raquel Pennington taking on Mayra Bueno Silva for the bantamweight title. We got Neil Magny back in there against Canada's Mike Malott, and Arnold Allen from the UK taking on Movsar Evloev, and a ton of other great fights as well. Chris Curtis, Sean Strickland's training partner. That's a good one. Remember, Sean Strickland talked about Chris Curtis as well. I think Chris Curtis deleted his Twitter. I don't know if it's back, but that's what happened. That was a bit of the calamity throughout all that shit talk there. But still, there it is. What do you think about that? Sean Strickland bit Dricus Du Plessis. Then he said things are off the table, when certainly things were on the table for Sean Strickland. I've got no judgment in any of it. I couldn't care less. This is the fight game. People are trying to knock each other out unconscious, okay? We're trying to do real damage to one another because that's the name of the game. That's the business that we're in. And a little bit of shit talk, well, it goes a long way. And you love it. Don't lie. Some of you might say, I prefer more of the George St. Pierre angle. Are you intoxicated or something?
Are you intoxicated or something?
Is that all you're going to say?
Because, yeah, all right, it's beautiful to see a bit of sportsmanship, but it's also good to see a little bit of shit talk, and it hypes the fights. Anyway, enjoy it. I can't wait for it. Subscribe, ring the bell, and I'll see you soon.